Hi friends, this piece is going to be about Blackout and found poetry. Some of your materials you're going to need is an old book or some magazines, some markers or other coloring materials that you might want to use to do the piece in the end, some glue or Mod Podge, and then I just grabbed some paint, so gesso and black acrylic paint. Paintbrushes, water, scissors, things like that to kind of finish the piece in the end. So the first step is to just find a random book page, and so I just sort of flipped to any page in the book and then I grabbed what I needed. The first thing is to actually go through and highlight or underline any of the words that jump out at you, so words or phrases. So just sort of scan it. You don't have to read the entire page. You're just sort of looking for anything that looks interesting to start with. Then you go back and actually read the entire page in its full. So here I'm going back and reading the words that I actually highlighted and the phrases around it to see how I can connect the poem together to have something that sort of makes sense in the end. I'm not using every single one of those words or phrases that I initially outlined. I'm just simply picking the ones that sort of connect together thematically. You might also want to include transition words. That way your poem makes more sense in the end and you'll have something that actually reads as a full statement. So I just sort of boxed mine in. You can circle them, highlight them, whatever you need to kind of pull them out of the page, but I just sort of went with boxing them in because I knew I was going to block out most of the page with paints. And so in the end, my poem read as Mother, sweat streaked, face white, my voice scared. And I really liked it because I planned on doing a face and I knew the scared was going to be like right where the eye was. My father, the traitor, 300 miles, we left him. Used all his money, lost. So I knew I wanted to do a piece that had a profile sort of in one side of the page and then a road and some money. So in order to make my piece a little bit more sturdy, I glued the book page into my sketchbook to kind of give it some border area. So I used the Mod Podge to make sure that it was nice and flat, and then I did a coat of Mod Podge over it. You don't have to do this, I just wanted to so that it didn't have any edges that were peeling up off of the page. And then I started with my paints. I started with the white gesso and just sort of blocked in some of the areas around the words and phrases that I had initially highlighted in the beginning. And I also did the exact same thing with the black paint and just sort of gave myself a nice coat of paint to begin. That way I had a really neat area that I could do my artwork on top of. Now, if you wanted to start sketching right away and not block out some of the words, you can totally do that. This is kind of where your piece takes your choice on how you want to finish it. If you want to sketch with pencil, your image that sort of connects your words and your poem together, you can do that. I chose to block out everything else first because I wanted to see where the words were actually placed so that I could do my drawing around it in those areas. But if you feel more confident in just sort of sketching and then blocking everything in, you can work that way as well. So here's my piece. This is kind of like layer one. So I'm going to set this aside and show you the found poetry, word poetry. So take a magazine, and I chose Rolling Stone because they have a lot of large headlines and different advertisements. And so you're just going to sort of find words and phrases that jump out at you. So I chose to kind of find things that were in different colors and different fonts. And you don't need a ton of them. I'd say probably anywhere from 7 to 10 different phrases or words that you can kind of create a little found poem out of. So look for different advertisements, look for different fonts, different colors, different sizes. And so that's what I tried to make sure that I did when I was finding the words that I wanted to use for mine, and not really having any sort of idea as to what the poem was actually going to be. I just went very spontaneously through the magazine and found things that just sort of jumped off of the page at me. So then you have kind of a pile of words, and you can see this is the one that I wasn't going to use, but my ending poem was "The Rolling Lizard Wizard Never Sounds Random." So I drew a lizard with his wizard hat, and he's holding a wand and some magic, and I knew I was going to finish that with some of the markers. But coming back to layer 2 of my Blackout poem, you can see that I've added the profile with the gesso, and I've added more black paint in the form of like hair, and went in with darker layers to make a road. Finally, I wanted to finish it by using my Tombow markers and completing the little dollar drawings. So I'm using a couple of different markers so I can blend the colors together. I'm not really concerned with making them super detailed. I think you can kind of get the idea as to what they are without having a lot of specific detail. Plus, it makes the entire piece a little bit more open for interpretation. But you can get as detailed in your drawing as you possibly want to. And so this is great because I have that exterior border in my sketchbook. If you choose to only do your drawing on the book page, that's totally fine. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to put it in your sketchbook. I just liked that it gave me more real estate to use for the piece itself. And then I went back with a black pen to add even more little bits of detail. So I drew some detail in the dollar bills, and then I went back and kind of outlined some of the words in the face, especially that scared word right where the eye is. And then I added sort of like a black sun into the sky to make it a little bit more ominous. And in the end, I was really happy with how this piece turned out, because it has a certain level of detail to where you can get the idea as to what the poem is talking about, but it has a lot of open-endedness as well, to where the viewer can sort of read between the lines and interject their own meaning as well. And so these are the two different types of pieces that you're going to be creating. Is one found object or found word poem, which is similar to what I used with the magazine, and then the Blackout poem, which is this one here. And then you'll have two different types of poetry related artworks that are really neat in the end.